Wuthering Waves 2.0 has been legendary, and over the course of time, we've gotten plenty of new 5-star character releases along the way. However, what about the standard units that have been in the game since launch? What are they like in the meta after so much time has passed? What has changed about their value since launch? So today, I thought it'd be fun to evaluate each standard unit and give my current opinion on where I currently think they stand in the meta. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Let's kick things right off with none other than Virgilroth, everybody's favorite mathematical device. Back when the game was first coming out, this lad was easily the most sought after standard character. Understandably so, he looks real cool and fights in a real cool way. He was solid back when our character roster wasn't that large, and people hadn't realized his core gameplay flaws yet. However, it didn't take long for him to fall off. The guy is needlessly clunky to play in exchange for pretty underwhelming damage numbers. Jianxin coming out was a pretty good buff to his teams, but ultimately, he still couldn't compete. Xiangling Yao Yao came along and cost a grand total of 0 astrites on his launch banner. So quite literally everyone gained access to Virgilroth's direct power creep if they were active during the second half of 1.2, not to mention how Kuro re-ran him literally only after a single patch had fully passed. He has very little value these days. Pretty much the only reason as to why you'd be using him is to pair him with the scientist that sealed his meta downfall, or because he's a really cool dude. I think it's a shame as to how mid he is, since he was an initial fan favorite for good reason, not to mention how Kuro is totally neglecting him plot-wise. He really doesn't have any super noteworthy strengths, and desperately wants to be played either next to Jianxin or Xiangling, so he's not even free-to-play friendly either. Isn't that just nice? C tier on the current standard rankings. His reputation is pretty much only ever worsened as the patches have gone on, and I can't see him making any sort of grand comeback in the near future. Then we move on to Jianxin. She was actually one of my personal favorites when the game was first coming out, so it's actually quite a shame that the character ended up never catching on. You see, she had great potential at first. The amount of liberation buffing she has in her kit is nothing to scoff at. However, there's a little something called Calcharo generation, which completely bricked her long-term viability. Over the patches, the only real synergy that she may have gained would be Xiangling Yao Yao. Her liberation buffing is pretty good for him. However, you're basically never gonna actually be playing that, because, man, it sucks. But long field time can seriously cook a unit's meta value. Tao Chi posed a similar issue. However, Lumi coming out in 1.4 only further confirmed that field time is one of the most integral qualities when it comes to deciding a unit's value. Her special heavy attack takes 1,000 years to cast, and ignoring it is gonna cook your energy gen. Sure, giving her Concerto generationating gauntlets does indeed help alleviate her issues a little, but it's not enough to make her a valuable option in many modern teams. She has grouping, which is neat, but it's not really crazy enough to make up for all of her flaws, more so just neat for lower TOA floors that feature weaker groupable enemies. Perhaps if she were to get a set in the future which can help with her rotation speed, or if we were to get some units in the future which could perhaps be fine with the length of a rotation due to wanting the buff so badly, her value could increase. But as it stands, she's an incredibly subpar Xiangling Yao Yao teammate, with pretty much no other notable teams to speak of. I'm a big fan of the character design, so here's hoping that she'll be more useful one day, man. C tier below Calcharo. The reason as to why I'm putting Virgilroth a spot higher is due to his Xiangling Yao Yao dual carry team being stronger than having Jianxin supporting the scientist instead. He has teams. The Kung Fu lady debatably doesn't even have that. Then we move on to an actually good character. Verina is one of the best characters in the game. This was true on launch, and it's still true in 2.0. The main thing that's changed is that Verina is no longer the best character in the entire game. While that completely depends on what you value, of course, I personally would award that honor to Shorekeeper. However, because the TOA demands 3 teams, Verina ends up remaining as one of this game's absolute S tier supports on the whole. Basically 0 field time required in order to make her work, needs 0 investment in order to dish out her big buffs, and she generally remains as being super duper good. Even if Shorekeeper is better, you're pretty much 100% gonna see more use out of her if you're trying to tackle the TOA in the most efficient way possible. As the patches have gone on, she's only continued to be an excellent third slot option for basically every team in the game. Her coordinated attacks lent her especially well to Jianxin, who released in 1.1. Aside from the Magistrate, she doesn't really have any specific qualities for any particular character. She simply works well with all of them, right from the first release of the game all the way up until current day. There's not a single limited 5-star that can't effectively utilize her. Being easy to use along with providing survivability is splendid too. It's rather difficult to fault this character. The only way that Kuro can properly eliminate her from the meta is to make 2 more third slot team options that provide stronger buffs than her while sharing an equal amount of versatility. Shorekeeper managed to achieve this, and what do you know? She ended up becoming another one of this game's top meta picks. Her kit has an excellent framework which is easy to improve upon. I think it's pretty much impossible for her pull value to decrease, because she's always going to be the most desirable out of every standard banner character. You really don't have much good reason to aim for anyone else. Pretty much every unit in the game can use her without exceptions. I doubt that this is going to change throughout the duration of Wuthering Waves 2.x era. Definitely an S-tier standard character. If this were a full tier list ranking every single unit in the game, Verina would still find herself sitting comfortably in the top tier. Her value has remained purely positive throughout her time in the game. Certainly a commendable achievement considering that we're all the way in 2.0 now. Encore's pretty interesting. She's actually one of the stronger characters that Wuthering Waves DPS roster has to offer. On launch, I honestly wasn't quite sure what to make of her. I actually thought she was pretty bad at the time, which couldn't have been further from the truth. To this day, she remains as being a pretty good fusion DPS. In the hands of the right player, she can actually be really strong. You'd be shocked at how powerful she can actually be. She gained Changli as a teammate in 1.1, but since then, hasn't seen any of her additional teammates aside from the universally acclaimed Shorekeeper. Even though we've gotten so many good new DPS characters in the game since the initial launch, Encore remains as being super high potential. She fills a certain playstyle that no other DPS character does, and despite having a low bar to entry, she has a very high skill ceiling. I would say she remains as being rewarding for skilled individuals. She's so much better than Virgil Roth, it's hilarious. I genuinely wonder as to why they put so much standard character power budget into Encore when Calcharo is easily a way more interesting unit. I get that that's a subjective take, but considering that it's him that most people were after when the game was first coming out, I don't think I'd be wrong in saying most people found him way cooler than a little sheep kid. Not to mention how one remains is a super solid carry, whereas the other got power crept by a free limited 5-star. Did someone at Kuro just really hate Final Fantasy VII? Well, that's enough making fun of evaluating Encore. I'm gonna stick her into A tier when it comes to the standard character rankings. She holds her own very impressively. I think she deserves to be called a good character when you realize that she's able to produce performance equivalent to that of a decent tier limited 5-star DPS. Right, so speaking of standard characters which received 0 power budget, Lingyang. This character is straight up garbage. I have no clue as to who the heck actually still plays this guy in the ripe old year of 2025. The dude is stupidly clunky, does negative numbers in terms of damage, and has minimal redeeming qualities. Okay, sure, Jojo can work with him, but man, what a waste of a perfectly good silly painter. You could be using her with, I don't know, a real Glacio DPS, or even with the almighty Magistrate of Jinzhou. Brother, I would rather play freaking DPS Yinlin without String Master as opposed to being made to play Lingyang. The Clunkfest is just nuts. He was dead on arrival, and time did not heal these wounds. Even if you put him in a team with Judge and Shorekeeper and shove him on the absolute strongest echoes that you can piece together, he's still gonna feel like garbage to play. Calcharo's already a little rough to play, but Lingyang, he scales it up to a whole nother level. It definitely feels like this guy was designed to be the undesirable standard unit. Come on, you know what I mean. Every gacha game has one. Chi-Chi, Jianxin, Nekomata, then none other than Lingyang. I'll give the guy this. He's at least the best out of the undesirable standard unit bunch, but is that really a flex at all? Congratulations, you're the least stinky poop. You're still poop though. I think with this guy, it's safe to just push him under the rug and pretend like Kuro never made him. As far as anybody is concerned, Carlotta is our first true Glacio DPS. Lingyang was created solely to fulfill the purpose of fueling meme clears. I will say this though, if you're somehow a Lingyang main, then I salute you deeply. D tier for sure, the worst standard character in all of Wuthering Waves, even to this day. The journey from 1.0 up to 2.0 has certainly been a fun one. I would say that the introduction of new characters hasn't actually changed the positions of most of these characters much. While a few certainly gained new competent team synergies, their general positions in the meta have mostly remained the same. I will say that I'm pretty surprised of how well Encore is aged. I do hope that Calcharo may get more love one day, but let's be realistic. That's just a Shangling Yao Yao buff. But what do you think about the current state of Wuthering Waves standards? Has their value massively shifted now that we're in 2.0, or do you agree that things have remained relatively the same? Let me know down below, I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, I have a ZZZ second channel. Head on over and subscribe if you're interested in some fun, silly ZZZ content. I'd also like to mention that I stream on Twitch. I stream once a week, every week on Saturdays, starting from 3 PM UK time. Come along so we can play Wuthering Waves, ZZZ, and do some other fun stuff together. Hopefully this video was able to tell you about the current state of Wuthering Waves standards now that we're in 2.0. This has been Juice, signing out, and listen, if we set aside meta, Calcharo would absolutely cook all of them in an arm wrestle, so who's really winning here?